So, is anything interesting happening in the world today? It's been pretty boring the past week, right?
The last 3 days, right? Just hasn't
Yeah,
been
yeah.
that
Like, what's
exciting.
really been happening?
We only started to attack Iran and take out the IRGC, but, no big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. That's nothing. All right. So everyone, I have with me Intel guy. We're gonna talk about the war taking place. We're gonna talk about a lot of the intelligence covering this, and then we're probably gonna touch into America being stretched too thin, maybe nuclear deterrence stuff, just overall America's defense posturing in the world. Intel guy, can you tell us your expertise? Give us your credentials.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Yeah, I go by the Intel guy because it was just the name I came up with. But the background is that I was a Marine Corps intelligence officer who walked a pretty unique path during my time in the intel community. I was able to serve on two different tours with Special Operations Command, one with SOCPAC, that's Special Operations Command Pacific, another with through the NSA supporting JSOC. And JSOC, everybody should know, is all your tier one assets, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, other teams you've probably never heard of. And yeah, I did a little over 10 years doing that. And now I'm in the private sector providing one of the things I actually did while I was there was teaching analysts how to be really good at their jobs. So now I do that in the private sector for Fortune 500.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So, do you think, because I am my feeds are bombarded with, oh, this is a huge mistake of the United States. There's no way we could sustain a long-term incursion into Iran. I disagree with that. I think I just, if everyone's saying that now, I mean, I'm 100% certain that the military has been like, oh, okay. Even before the 12-day war, I think the military's been like, we're gonna do this eventually, so let's stock up. That's my opinion. Am I wrong?
You're not far off. No. In fact, one of the very first things I did when I joined the intelligence community as a Marine Corps officer was plan on the invasion of Iran.
Okay, there we
That was a
go.
long time ago. We've been thinking about this for a while.
All right, so it's not like just we're pulling it out of the hat.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, we have invasion plans for every country that we have interest in. So, clearly we just dusted off the invasion book and, readjusted it, updated it. But, overall, we've been planning for it for a very long time.
All right, so then why are we seeing so much information about what kind of a mistake we're making? And these aren't just propagandists. These are even, I can't even tell you the faces, but just, we're seeing on the news that like, okay, well, Iran is causing all kinds of damage in the Gulf region, and that is going to fracture, trust in American defense. Like, what do you think?
Well, so that question actually has a really long answer to it. So I don't
We
know.
have a podcast.
Which fair enough. It's just, if you listen to Marco Rubio, you're probably going to get your best answers. He basically outlined, why we did this and the greater strategic reason behind it. And one of the things that he said, and of course we're filming this late at night, so now my brain is starting to slow down a bit. But one of the things he was focused in on was now was the best time, that they were a persistent threat, that they were the weakest they've ever been in 47 years, that
Yes.
yeah, that all of the things they have done in aggregate equal a persistent, endearing threat.
Hmm.
And one of the concerns that they don't talk about a lot, because it kind of breaks away from, well, it doesn't break away from the immediacy of it, but one of the concerns they were talking about, that in fact he spoke on this, I think recently, was, well, what do? We wait till they actually build up a ballistic missile force that is so large and so capable to reach so many people. And then behind that wall of basic invincibility of ballistic missiles, they develop a nuclear weapon, and not just one, but maybe a dozen. Because at that point, that they build such an arsenal of ballistic missiles that they actually overwhelm our capability to stockpile enough munitions to take them out. That they're free to do whatever they want at that point. And because we can't take the risk of them developing the nuclear weapon, we have to take the opportunity now. And then there's other implications beyond Iran, right? It goes to China, and we can get into that in a moment.
Okay, well, even when we were negotiating with Iran under Obama, it's not like Iran was going to one day welcome Israel as a member of the Middle East. They were still devoted to removing Israel. They were still saying death to America. They were still funding their proxies. They were still unleashing all kinds of conflicts in the Middle East and working to undermine U.S. interests. They were just being polite.
And in fact, I do remember what I was going to say is that we actually, people don't believe, maybe not believe this, but we actually operate under the old adage: if they tell you who they are, believe them.
Yes. Yeah.
We actually base a lot of national security strategy off of that, because what that does is it invites risk, and the U.S. government is charged with planning against every risk out there, no matter
Yes.
how small it is. Why do you think we have such a massive nuclear capability for
Yeah.
something that may never occur?
Yes. Yes.
But
To
it's
be
all
prepared for the risk.
Yeah, and that risk is the greatest, and so of course we're going to be maximally prepared for it.
See, the maximal preparation thing, so many people keep saying, well, what about irrational actors? That is what the US military prepares for. They are not preparing for equitable punishment. They are preparing for an overwhelming ability to stop an irrational actor in their tracks, right?
Right.
That's why in our war game scenario, we always put ourselves at the least advantageous position. Like we handicap ourselves like the Finland thing. Remember that Finland exercise I mentioned? Again, I was trying to add skepticism to the report, but I'm sure in that Finland military exercise with the training, we handicapped ourselves on
Absolutely, in every
purpose.
single exercise.
So
There is not a single exercise where we don't handicap ourselves, because the purpose of these exercises is not to high five ourselves at the end of the day and say, "Oh, look at this great job we won against a simulated enemy."
yeah,
It's to identify all our weaknesses so we can focus on building them up.
yes.
One of the things we always look at is is strengths and weaknesses, and we view weaknesses as gaps, and so we always try to fill those gaps.
So I wanted to say this with Iran. People were saying, yeah, it was a huge mistake. We can't possibly win in Iran. But you just said Iran is at its weakest in 47 years and they're a persistent threat. So if not now, when? Because never is not an option. The other thing is, Iran doomed themselves when they attacked their neighbors who were speaking up for Iran. I mean, they doomed themselves when they struck Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan, Kuwait, the UAE. Okay, because now there is a united coalition. They may not invade Iran, but oh, and also, of course, the UK and France and Greece. But now the US and Israel don't have to focus as much of their efforts on taking out anything that comes out of Iran. That can go under the umbrella of protection of these dozen countries, while Israel and the United States can just hammer away at more key infrastructure. These influencers, they're making it sound like the IRGC can keep going like this way forever when they started off on the 28th with 2,500 ballistic missiles. 800 have been fired, 500 have been destroyed.
More than 800 have been fired.
Well, that was, yeah, my reading was from 12 hours ago, so you're probably right. So they have a shrinking ballistic missile capacity. They have decentralized command, and they're based on old orders, so they're not connected. So they don't know they're not being given updates on this situation changes. And it's just, how is that a formidable foe? They can do economic damage, but how are they a significant threat anymore? Now they're almost at the level of just being, they're like, to me, it just seems like they're this close from just being another warring tribe.
Yeah, if it wasn't for all of their technology, their infrastructure, and their previous capabilities, they basically would be viewed as another warring tribe, and that's basically what they're getting shrunk down to. You hit a lot of topics well. You identified the fact that we're now able to leverage our host nations' defense weapons that they purchased from us. That wasn't even necessarily in our calculus. I think that was probably the most dangerous type of mission planning that they probably looked at as a most dangerous, least likely to occur. Well, the least likely occurred, and honestly, all for the better, because again, it didn't turn out the way Iran hoped for. It's like they weren't even listening to their neighbors' messaging. Their neighbors' messaging was, there were two parts to the message. It was, we did not help the U.S. attack you, but you better not attack us. It's like they didn't hear the first part, or the last part, that is, because
Yeah.
their hope was that they would then turn on the U.S. and say, "Get out of our country, stop attacking Iran," and the opposite happened. It's like, "How dare you attack us? This wasn't our war, and now we're going to set up defenses, maybe attack you.
Yeah.
Or you're done for, Iran."
Because Iran has been so heavily infiltrated by Israel. Do you think maybe the Iranians gained bad intel? Maybe they were told, just like Russia was given intel that Ukraine wouldn't fight, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves. Maybe Iran was given intel that, oh my gosh, if you attack these countries, they will withdraw their support for America because they're nowhere near as fortified. Do you think, like, because that'd be useful?
Yeah, I mean, that could have definitely, that definitely could have been like a man in the middle attack where they intercept the message and change it. That could have been, somebody that was a close confidant that was actually turned to be a Mossad agent. There's definitely intel ops play that could have been that, or it just also could have been bad interpretation.
Okay, so how about this? What mistakes do you think so far in this three-day operation, 4-day operation? What mistakes have been made by Israel and the United States?
What mistakes? Boy, I haven't actually even thought about mistakes. I should though, right? It's hard to lay out the type of mistakes from a military perspective because you're not given all of the information on how the strikes went and stuff like that. Maybe from a geopolitical perspective, the convincing is very hard. The messaging from the Trump administration has been genuinely just bad for the almost the entire time he's been in office, and it's so.
It's
Uh,
true.
and some of that has some of the media has some of that to blame, but
Yes.
because they're going to reframe it to make it look combative so they can get clicks and views, that type of thing. um but people are not buying the even though he outlined it honestly pretty well in his true social posts. It's not selling well because everybody's clinging onto the word immediate. Because the other part of this is that the Trump administration has to take out the IRGC due to a geopolitical reason that we foresee due to risks and threats that have been told to us that are going to occur in the future. But you can't wrap that in legal justification to exact current actions. So you
Yes.
have to lean on current and historic actions and then wrap that into an immediate slash. And they haven't even used this word. This is probably where they'd also faulted at persistent. I haven't heard them say immediate and persistent. They should have been saying that from the start. All they keep saying is they present an immediate threat. No, they present an immediate and persistent threat based off of everything I just told you. And so yeah, people are clinging onto that word immediate like it's gold. And it's
Well,
yeah.
I think what and I've had issue with this. I was under the impression that we took out Iran's nuclear program in the 12-day war. We talked about this,
Why do you have that impression?
what was that?
Why did you get that impression?
Well, one of them you told me the White House mentioned it, and it's like the B-2 bomber. We have the ultimate bunker busters. We are the sole country with that kind of bunker busting power, with the only plane that could drop it, and we dropped 14 of them. I figured maybe 10, but like 14, I'm like, oh my God. So I was under the impression that, okay, they're done. And when you mentioned that they actually managed to drop two in the same hole, that
Right.
was pretty impressive. I'm like, okay, so these pilots clearly knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and it's not just the pilots, it's the precision. It is the precision of the technology, right? The actual
Yes.
engineers that are tooling these devices to and literally these, and they're huge devices, and then plant them on a 1 foot by 1 foot location. Is that just speaks to American ingenuity and
Yes.
technology. No other country can come to that level of accuracy. That said, the messaging gets lost because everybody's like, "Well, Trump said we destroyed it forever." Blah blah. Okay, we know Trump exaggerates, but and then the initial analysis comes out and says, "Well, we know that we damaged them and set them back." I made the assessment. I turned out to be right that it was going to be about 18 months based off of all the information we had, and that's honestly what eventually came out was we pushed them back 18 months to 2 years. So that's not good enough. It's just
Mhm.
another example of kicking the can down the road. The JCPOA, all it did was kick the can down the. That's what it was designed to do, anyways. Kick the can down the road, and it had ending markers in like 2025, 2026. It was supposed to start lightening up on them, anyways, and we're already here. So like all of this lined up, regardless of it being effective or not. All it did was kick the can down the road to kinetic action, which still kicked it down by like 2 years. Well, what's supposed to happen in 2 years? China gets ever closer to the ability to invade Taiwan, and Iran still manages to build up their ballistic missiles capability and develop another, and, bring us to the brink of developing a nuclear weapon. And at that point, we'll either have a different president that's not willing to make the calculated risk, or we will have a president willing to make the calculated risk, but they'll have already built up such a massive defense, learning from their failures, that will be unsuccessful.
I think Iran would have needed more time to actually build a ballistic defense just because Israel took out about 60% of their missile launchers in the first invasion in the
I
12-day
think it was
war.
40%. Um,
What was 60? There was a 60%. Okay, I'll take your word for it. But
with the amount of missiles that they had left to launch, I think there was an aggregate number of 60%. like capability, but like they
Maybe they were dropped to 60% capability. That's probably
sorry,
what it
you
was.
said 40. I reversed the numbers. Yeah, but yeah.
To me, it just seemed like Iran was this, for at least even now, was like this toothless animal. I don't know the level of help that they were getting from China and Russia after the 12-day war.
Well, we did intercept some, I think it was some missile development parts or some machinery that would allow them to develop more missiles. I think it was what it was that rarely, okay, first of all, we don't rarely intercept vessels anymore, thanks to the Trump administration. We're actually, bringing back piracy
Yeah,
or what's it called? Pirateering. Anyways,
yeah.
and I've been advocating this for a long time. Not to get on too much of a tangent, but it's always been irritating to me when presidents say, "Well, we instituted sanctions on these ships and these industries," and then we don't do anything about it. We just force them to maneuver to these ghost fleets, and then we don't arrest the ghost fleets. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, we make
And
it a little bit more expensive.
yeah, that's all we did. And then so that's why everyone's like, well, sanctions don't work. Well, no kidding, they don't work because we don't actually go on full enforcement. Then came the Trump administration and we started doing that. We had managed to intercept a ship that left from China going to Iran and it had machinery missile development parts. So we were, I mean, they were reconstituting and China was helping. And we're like,
Yeah, see, and I'm a big fan of international law, respect country sovereignty, but it's really difficult when one country is saying, we're going to blow your country to hell. So we know what your end goal is.
when they tell you who they are, you got to believe them. The thing is that the naysayers are the problem because they try and put logic behind their thought process, and they basically message it. The message that they try and convey is, oh, they'll never actually do that. They are just saying that to rile up their base to keep their domestic populace pro IRGC, but they're never actually going to do that. And it's like, well, if they're never actually going to do it, then why are they building up so much?
Yeah. And
Like that's
I
the problem.
mean, the problem with the left is like, they're never going to do that. Like, I don't, how would the left know what somebody is going to do in the future? Like, I just think, because if I were a lefty, even though I may seem like one, but if I were a lefty and let's say, okay, I didn't like I'm not a fan of Trump, but a lefty who's like, oh, the Republicans, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to repeal Roe versus Wade, and they're going to get rid of affirmative action, they're going to do all these things. And if someone on the right said, well, they're not really going to do all that, how ridiculous would that sound?
I don't know if I'm able to follow the comparison because
Well, because a lefty who's thinking that, oh, this person, like these people are taking all of these steps. Like, let's say they're taking step B and C, but that doesn't mean they're going to go all the way to Z. They're just taking the first steps, but they're not going to go all the way to Z. Well, why are they taking the first steps there in the first place? So that
I
is how
think you have to
Trump
be very
won.
specific on the topics though, because like when you try to draw a comparison, and I may be misunderstanding what you're saying, but when you bring up the Republicans who then roll back, who then say, "Oh, they're not going to do it," and I'm like, "Well, actually, they've been telling you for the last 50 years they're going to do it, and they're going to roll back Roe v. Wade." It's not for us to right or wrong because there is this interpretation. There's just two different sides that view how to interpret the Constitution, and so they were just basically saying, Roe v. Wade over what was legislation by the bench, and we are just fixing that.
So you added to my point and about Iran and how still the lefties are wrong. So the Republicans are saying this is what we're going to do. At least the ones in power, the ones who are pushing the system. This is what we're going to do. We want to do these things. But then there were Republicans who were like, no, they're not going to do all these things. Like, I guess you could say lower level Republicans.
Mhm.
And to me, it's the same thing as people looking at Iran and they're building this huge arsenal and they're pursuing nuclear research. And and then people saying, no, they're not
Oh,
going to actually
got
try
it.
to get a nuclear bomb. They're not going to try to actually do these things. Well, then why are you doing it? And they're telling you that they're going to do it.
It
Like,
would be
how
one
many
thing if
times
it would be
has
one thing
Iranian leadership, I just want to say this, how many times has Iranian leadership called Israel a one bomb country? You just bomb them once. So it's like, okay, that's
right.
all I need to hear.
And that's the thing. If all they ever did was say these things, but then like they had no ballistic missile capability or they had no nuclear reactors developing enriching uranium past 3%. If they didn't have those things, then yeah, we wouldn't believe them. We'd be like, yeah, you guys just are saying this to say it. But it's the fact that you're backing up what you're saying is the problem that we can't afford. And I've adopted this saying where is it a risk? Absolutely. Is it a certainty? No. But it's such a high risk that we have to treat it as a certainty.
Well, are they making their proxies feed people? Are they having their proxies make gardens in highly desert regions? Are they building hospitals? No, they are attacking Israel with missiles and rockets. They are attacking friends of Israel with missiles and
Missiles.
rockets.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Hezbollah is attacking with missiles given, right, by Iran. Hamas is digging up sewer pipes that were
Yeah.
meant to bring water and slow sewage and turning them into missiles.
So they're telling us who they are. And I sympathize with the people of Gaza. I think the response is disproportionate. What happened on October 7th, 2023, but Hamas hasn't been helping it based on everything that's going on. How long do you think this is going to take? Because I just made a post. It's not doing well, but I said it's not a matter of if we can defeat the IRGC. It's a matter of when. So, what do you think? How long do you think it would take? How long do you think we can sustain this barrage against Iran?
We absolutely have enough capability, munitions, and equipment to sustain their defeat. That anybody saying otherwise just doesn't know what they're talking about. We planned well in advance. Obviously, we took so long to move so many forces. The mathematicians behind the scenes were already calculating what is needed to do to completely erode their capability to launch ballistic missiles. We're not looking to destroy all the ballistic missiles. We're just looking to destroy all the launchers and then take out any other heavy machinery and equipment that aids their military. And so every single day we are attriting their forces. Every time they launch, we see it, and I mean, like, so we can see every single plume of smoke from a missile anywhere on the planet. I'm surprised this is unclassified information, but it is. And basically, what happens, I forget the satellite network's names. Basically, what happens is the missile launches. We see the flare from space. That information gets sent down to a targeting sortie, maybe a aircraft, maybe our own maybe a Tomahawk missile, from a submarine, whatever, and we go and we take it out. And so, yeah, and so not only are we looking for it before it launches, but the moment they launch, like, oh, there they are, and we annihilate them.
So we can do this for months?
Yeah, we can do this for, yeah, absolutely.
Do you think we will need months or weeks?
I think I don't want to say Trump is right. There, you should never put a timeline on major conflict. Major conflict is event driven, not time driven. So the faster you can engage the enemy and get inside their OODA loop, the observe, orient, decide, and act, the faster you can get inside their OODA loop, the faster you crush them. And so we
Yes.
want them to roll out their missiles and fire off their missiles, and we want them to engage us because it helps us destroy them faster. And so Trump could be right. We're literally 3 days into this, and we have destroyed their air force, their navy, the majority of their military equipment. We've taken out 50 of their top leaders, and every single time they launch a missile, we destroy their site. We can absolutely probably. I'm not saying 4 weeks is a good guess, but it's a good guess.
Which has to be destroyed before the Iranian people can take over on their own.
Well, that's interesting you say that. I don't know if you saw the news reports today, but they finally admitted what we've been suspecting for a while, and they are arming the Kurdish militias that are the Kurdish Iranians. So and I'm getting into the real interesting stuff that we probably should have talked about an hour ago, which is the fact that Mossad has a very elaborate human network inside Iran.
Yeah.
They established it in 2015, and it's how they were able to take down Iran the first time during the 12-day war. The 12-day war, that network never went away, and so they have been quietly creating opposition amongst the civilian ranks and amongst key players that have yet to be identified, to include, though, the traditional Kurds that have always been marginalized
Yeah.
throughout all these wars. There's an entire tribe of Kurds that are like, we just want something of our own, and so we leverage that to our benefit. Maybe they'll actually get something out of a new Iran, and so we have CIA ground branch, we have Israel's Mossad, and then of course we have special operations forces of teams we don't talk about, and they're
You
all
should have
getting
led with
started.
that. You should have
That,
led with that. Holy
yeah,
cow, I had no idea about this.
yeah, they're all getting started. This is literally day three.
So
So
hold on, I gotta say something. So guys, this is the free part of the podcast. The rest, if you want to hear it, is going to be on Patreon. We are gonna talk about Intel Guy's opinion on the Council of Peace. We're gonna go more into intelligence dynamics in Iran. And yeah, so if you want to watch the rest, go on to my Patreon. Okay, so